Okay. So welcome everyone. My name's Anita Thompson of Art Venture Workshops, and I welcome you to the Evil Queens Apple Drawing this evening, sponsored by Warminster Library. This will be recorded, and I will send out the recording to Sabrina tonight, and she will send it to you this week. So I'm going to copy the supplies one more time in the chat. A little change here as far as the colored pencils. Originally, I had down that we need white, and we do not need white. So we only need 6 colored pencils, and that is brown, or I'm sorry, red, blue, yellow, green, brown, and black. But we do not need white. Originally, when I sent this to Sabrina, it was in black, on black construction paper, but she wanted to change it to a drawing on white paper. So I forgot to remove the white. So I apologize for that. Okay, so we're going to get started here. We're going to be starting in pencil. And we're using either 8.5 by 11 printer paper, which is what I'm using, or you can use any kind of sketchbook or sketch paper. And your paper, excuse me, you want it to be landscape. So, portrait would be like this. Landscape is longwise in front of us. Oh, and I think there's somebody else coming out. Oh, okay. All right. So we are going to be needing our pencils first, and welcome Sacred Earth Healing Hearts. That's pretty cool. We are starting off using pencil. I will recopy in the chat for you what we're using, just so you have it, but this is being recorded. All right, so we're going to start off, obviously, with the hand. And so basically what's going to happen is we're going to be starting off at the bottom left corner and obviously going up towards the top right corner with our hand. So we're going to start off with the sleeve. That's going to happen right here. And so with our sleeve, what we're going to do is we're going to start making a line this way, and basically making the shape of it, making sure that it's open enough for our arm to peek through. So let's do that now. So again, here's the bottom left. We're going to start about right here. And just a reminder to make sure that you're drawing lightly. So we're going to go down towards the bottom of our paper here. And we're going to make sort of like as if we're making a cylinder. Now, once we have that, you also want to make sure that you've got room because we're going to make folds on the sleeves. So now we're going to create the arm and the fingers. So we're going to look at this. Basically, the arm is coming out and the sleeve obviously is hanging off of it. So we want to make sure to have our arm coming out up here. So we're going to make a bit of kind of a straight line. It's going to be a little bit thicker down here. And then we're going to start to curve upward just a little bit for the palm of our hand. And then once we do that, we're going to, for now, we're going to make kind of another curve. That is the part of our hand like this. So right here. Once we do that, we're going to come back over here because we're going to start to make the rest of the arm. So we're going to come back to our sleeve, the opening in our sleeve. And we're going to start to curve it Oops. Like so. So this is our wrist. This is our wrist area. And I think someday soon, I'm kind of thinking that I should do a class on hands. I know we've done drawings of hands before, but something that is really instructional. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create this finger first. So coming from here, so remember we've got an apple right in our hand. Well, it's obvious. It's actually the other way. You don't see the thumb. That's on the other side. But we're going to start here. And so we're going to curve a little bit down. And then from here, we're going to go slanted line up. And we're going to curve a bit. So what we're going to do first is we're sort of going to make our fingers almost look cartoonish. So it's going to bend. Here's our knuckle. And it's going to kind of look like this. So you may have to sort of play with this part in order for it to look right. And we're going to be going back and refixing. You know, we're also going to be playing with this part a little bit because we need a little more of a curve over here. So I had you kind of make it straight. But we're probably going to come back and curve this a little bit in here and then make it go outward just a little bit here. So it would look like, and if you want to do it now, you can. It's going to go inward a little more. And then it's going to curve a little bit outward, like so. But we're going to continue on. Now we have an apple that's going to be happening here. So we're going to draw that in lightly. So you want to figure out where your apple is going to sit. It should sit about right here so that all three fingers that are showing will be grasping it. Now remember, you can basically, you can make all of these very light, all of these lines, which I always encourage, so that you are able to go back and adjust. But right now, we're acting as if our apple is going to be sitting in our fingers. Here's the curve, the indent of inside the apple. We're making it look three-dimensional. And then we have our stem. So remember, it's easier to kind of draw the forms as they are and then go back and do some erasing. For instance, right here, I now want to erase where the stem is. And we're going to add a leaf as well. Now you can make your leaf as big as you want. And again, I'm going to do it a bit lighter because we are going to go back with colored pencil. I'm also going to make my finger here, finger and fingernail a little bit smaller. But now you have your apple that is going to be sitting in your hand. And then from here, we're going to draw these other two fingers that are showing. So because it's on the side, so kind of like trying to kind of show my fingers the side of it, we would have the other finger kind of coming out and grasping around the apple. So our finger's going to bend, and I'm doing sort of the outline of the knuckle. And I want to show you something. Basically, our fingers bend in 3 different spots for the most part. So you see this finger, there's my knuckle, it bends here and it bends here. So you basically have 4 different areas, or I'm sorry, 3, and then this is your palm. So just remembering that as you're creating fingers. So for instance, I'm going to put this in so that you know these are bending points. We can erase them later. But so here's the knuckle. And it's going to kind of come down here for the rest of the finger. I'm going to make this just a little bit closer. Depending on how your finger is bent, this part here, this section is going to be a little smaller. So it kind of looks like a robot finger right now. So I'm going to erase those parts. But if that is helpful for you, you can make your fingers like that, thinking about where they bend. And then we have the final 3rd finger. Oh, we have somebody coming in. Oh, Joanne. Hi, Joanne.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you, by the way.
You're welcome. So we're going to have the 3rd finger coming about right here. So we have kind of the fatty pad part, which is at the top. Here's a bit of the fingernail. And the finger for now is kind of going a little bit straight down, not exactly straight, but it's not bending as much as the others. And then we have a bit of a bend right here. And then one more time. Now you're going to take a look at your fingers. And this is where you may have to add a little more heftiness to your finger. It may have to be a little thinner, but so for instance, I'm looking here, these would be the bend parts. So if you want to make a little bit of a bend, so maybe, one part of the bone is here. So these are basically where the bones are bending and flexing. So I'm going to erase that just so you can see now. It should look a little bit like a hand at this point. The other thing is this finger should be lower, right? So that's why here's the nail bed. And we can start to draw those in like so. And here is the other one. So remember, they're on the side because you can see the side of them. And this one, you can make it a little bit more curvy if you want. And you can also have the skin behind the nail showing, right? So I'm just going to fix that so that now the nail is a little bit sticking out and you can still see the skin under here. I'm going to go a little bit closer now. And you can adjust your apple how you see fit. If you need for it to be a little closer to this finger, you can. I'm going to make mine a little bit rounder up here, a little bit bumpier. So you can see me changing the shape a little bit. And maybe a little bumpier here. And then we're going to come back down over where the sleeve is. And we're going to draw in the rest of the sleeve, which is basically just finishing off that oval. See, and now you have it sticking out of a sleeve. This is also where you might want to fix anything that looks a little strange. So for instance, this should be the longer part. And I'm going to make mine a little bit thinner down here. And then remembering to wrap the sleeve, there would be a little piece, you know, because it's three-dimensional, you can see that there would be a little piece of the clothing, obviously, you could see on the other side. And so now we're going to come over to the sleeve and we're going to make folds. So those folds are going to look like this. Because basically the material would be bunching up a little bit here. And then it would continue to curve around like so. So it's almost like you're taking little pieces of the fabric and making it kind of bumpy in this area. And once you do that, you'll have to go back and just erase a little bit of the lines you used before for those sleeves. And then we're going to be making the folds a little darker. And I'll wait for everyone to catch up. Now, one of our next things we're going to do, and I don't know if anybody could tell what this is, but this is sort of a skeleton. It's kind of like or a skull. I'm sorry, not a skeleton, not a whole skeleton, but like a skull face. And so, it's just kind of indicating the evil queen, what she's doing to the apple. That was my idea anyway. I just love I love the Snow White story. So we're going to kind of make the smokiness start over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make some very light drawing lines for the outline. But I'm going to do it darker so you can see it. So I'm going to twist this around. So what I'm doing is I'm making the bottom portion of the line here. And you are welcome to make it look differently if you want. And then we create what kind of looks like a skeleton face. I'm going to make this darker because I realize it's not showing up very well on Zoom. Again, yours should be very light because we want it to be smoke-like. Smoky. So it should not look like a solid line like mine does. And I will be changing that. Oops. Welcome, Karen. Hi, Karen. We're recording, so whatever you missed, you will be able to see.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, I'm kind of drawing the smoke. Kind of coming from the apple. This is an illustration. It's not supposed to be incredibly realistic, but I think it's fun. So now we have basically the illustrated part of all of this. And this is where we now pick up our tortillon or blending stump. We have everything drawn out for the most part. We're going to do the basically the pencil first, and then we're going to do the colored pencil. So basically, we're going to start up here and we're going to smooth out the line like so. We're going to smooth out all of our lines using our tortillon. So now you're going to be tracing around using your blending stump and smoothing out the hard lines that we've drawn. In the meantime, as we're doing this with the skull, you're going to be also going on the inside and making it gray. So again, what we're doing right now is we are smoothing all of the lines, not touching the apple for right now, but we're smoothing the smoke line and the outside for right now. of our fingers and hand, and even the clothing. And we are going to go back and add more sort of shading to everything. But we want sort of a kind of a smokiness around all of it for now. And then we're actually going to go back and add more of that using our pencil. I'm going to let everyone get caught up. I'm going to turn my other light on in my room while you're all catching up. Starting to get dark. Okay. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to start to smooth the lines on the skin. And we're going to actually start to do some shading, starting off right near the apple and in the palm of the hand. So we're going to smooth that out. Basically, we're going to be smoothing out a bit, and then we're going to be adding some pencil for the shading. So first we smooth out in the palm of the hand. And then we're going to now come down toward where the clothing is, and we're going to smooth out those lines. So just taking our tortillon and just blurring out those lines for now. Now they're not going to be completely blurred out, obviously. They're just going to be softened with some little bit of some shading there. I'm going to add a little light to that. There we go. We're also going to then come around and do the same to the nails, right around the nails. And then also the inside, or I should say the lines that are now surrounding the drawing of the fingers. So we're now smoothing everything. So basically the outside lines that we created for the fingers and the nail beds, I should say. And then, we're going to go back and we're going to create more shading. But for now, we're just smoothing everything. So you should now have a softish line or softish lines around everything. And we're going to start to now add shading on the outside of the smoke closest to the apple. And so we're going to do a combination now of using our pencil and the tortillon. And so we're going to be using the pencil, using the side of the pencil. And basically, so I'm going to show this up close so you can see. So we're going to come around these spots and we're going to sort of add a little bit of shading here by kind of going around in circles. And basically that's going to be the darker parts of the shading. The lighter parts that you see here, where the line is starting to disappear, you're going to use your tortillon. You're also going to be using your eraser to erase the lines that we originally made. So let's start with that. Let me adjust my camera here a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So let's start first with our pencil. So around here, it's a little darker. So I'm concentrating and going in one spot, kind of in circles. And I'm going around up, or I should say up against the line that we created. And I'm kind of creating the shading. I'm going to go really close so that you can see. So here I am adding a little bit, and now I'm going to get a little bit, just a little bit of shading right here, and I'm going to go really light. And then I'm going to smooth it out with my tortillon. Now I'm going to start bringing that into the space around the apple. Just with that little shading that we did, I'm going to bring that out and surround the apple by taking that shading and tracing around the exterior of the apple. So that it now has this smoky line around it. Now we're going to continue to add some darker spots, doing that combination of using the pencil and the tortillon. And then we're going to go back and erase some of the lines that are the lighter parts of the smoke. Okay, so let's go and follow this line here, this side. Whoops. So we have a little bit more dark here. So again, we're going to take our pencil. Now I'm going in light lines, kind of around the same area to create a little bit more darkness, not a whole lot. And I'm going to follow this line around. Again, adding some shading. I'm going to go all the way about right here. And then I'm going to smooth it out and extend the shading a bit by shading on top of the area and then bringing that shading outward just a little bit and your shading will be a little bit lighter in that area. And that's what you want. You're kind of getting a gradient. We're going to continue going up the left side here. We're going to leave this alone. Even though I made it dark, that's going to be erased. But so we're going to come back up here to the top. And we're going to add some shading around. About right in these areas. So I'm kind of tracing around where I just added some of those shaded areas. And then once you add some shading, you're then going to pick up your tortillon again and smooth out the shading. And you're going to start to kind of bring it around till about right here. Kind of this little nook and cranny here. And we are going to make that a little bit darker. And so we'll pick up our pencil and just add a little bit. Kind of like in that nook, that nookish area. You can see online that that's a little bit darker. And then we're going to add one final kind of darker spot. We're going to skip over this part. And we're going to add some darker around right here. With our pencil. And then again, smooth it out with your tortillon. Basically, we want sort of a lightish kind of smokiness all around the sort of smoke. So we also end up going on the right side here. And then we're going to start to erase a bit of the hard line so that it doesn't look so solid. Mine looks very solid. Yours may not because, as I was saying in my instructions, to keep it light, but just in case, we're gonna start to erase the lines anyway, or at least lighten them up. So the way we do that, I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna go on my line. And I'm just gonna start to follow it around. And I'm just gonna very lightly erase away a bit of the line. So I'm kind of following around and just taking away kind of the hard line, not taking away the shading as much as possible, but taking away the hard line. So you can start to see it starting to disappear. So you're not taking it away completely, but you're softening it so that it is a bit of a lighter line. And as you can see, I'm kind of doing it like along the edge. So now it looks a little bit more like smoke and not so much like hard lines. So you have the shading still, but not as much of the lines. And you may take away a little too much, so then you can just go back and sort of outline using your tortillon again, going right up against where the line sort of was. I mean, you should still have a line there, but not as pronounced. And you can just smooth out around it. And so you're going to get smoke, the smoky look around it. We're doing that for now just to the smoky area. And then you can go back and to make parts a little bit darker, the shading. Like I like to go back in the eyes, sort of like the spooky eyes here, and shade a little bit darker, closer to where the skull would be. And then on one side of the mouth, again on the shaded area. And then even with the smoke, sometimes there's parts where you want it just a little bit darker, kind of like I do it where it kind of indents. And then here again, where it meets the apple, just a little bit. You can make it a little more curvy. And then finally, you do actually want to go inside the smoke and make some parts a little bit more gray so that it's not so white. So I take my tortillon and I kind of start to smooth everything out, but leaving some spots a little bit whiter. And if you can't do that, what you can just do is go back in with an eraser when you're done, and then just erase away some parts of the gray. And now you've got a smokiness to your background. And you can add a little more smoke wherever you want when you're done. But we want to move on to the hand and start shading that. We started a little bit, but we're going to continue. And we're actually first going to start off with the fingers. And then we're going to move down into the palm and then the wrist. And then finally the sleeve and outside of the sleeve on either side, because there is shading there as well. So we're going to start first with the nails and around the nails. So basically, this is the nail bed. We're going to add, we already have actually some shading around it. We're going to add a little more on the fatty part of the finger. So you can, for now, we're going to be using our pencil. And so we're going to be making very light strokes. And I'm going to go closer so you can see how light those strokes are. I'm just kind of going back and forth. And we're going to kind of go around the nail bed. I'm going to take off some of this or clean up a little bit of the line, because basically we want to start lightening up the line around this finger. Kind of like what we did above. And we're going to kind of do that around each finger. So just lightening up the outside line of each finger. So we did some shading. We did lots of shading. And now we're just making it the line part not as dark so that we have the shaded part a little more prevalent. We're going to also do it to the wrist area. So you can see that my lines are disappearing, or at least lightening. But we're going to take that and we're going to start shading once again with our pencil and just adding a little bit lighter strokes. And we're going to start back where our fingers are. And so we're going to add some shading along this bottom portion of the fingers. And so we're going to leave just a little bit of space in between where the shading is and the finger on this one. And we're going to start shading some of the wrinkles of the finger as well, and where it would bend. So here's a bend part. We're going to do a very light shading. We're going to do this finger first. And so then we're also going to do a very light shading going down this side of the finger. And it's going to get a little thicker when it gets to the bending part here. And you're going to do some shading along the wrist. So it's going to kind of look like this. And what we're going to do, we're then going to make a very light line, almost like an oval shape, going up towards the palm. So coming from here, we make this shape and very light going towards the palm, because we're going to then shade all around this area, going in bold strokes. until we get to the other side here. And we're going to leave part of the paper, the white of the paper, and then shade down here. Reason being, that's a bit of the part of the hand, and we want to have a little bit of a not as much dark there. And I'm going to fix this part to be a little flatter, coming from the wrist. So if this part is a little too sort of round, you make it a little bit flatter. And then once you do that, you're going to take your tortillon again, and you're going to go right up against the arm and on the outside and just smooth out that line a little bit. We're also going to be adding some more pencil shading so that we can get a little bit more darkness. So we're talking about on the outside of the arm here. So we're going to come around this part here, this area right here. And we're going to start adding a little bit of shading, going in strokes back and forth. And then we get a little bit darker when it hits the sleeve. So let me change my camera here, camera view. So we're going to get a little darker right in this area. And then right up against the sleeve. And then we're going to have a little bit of a gradient. So you're going to get a little bit lighter with your pencil going away from the hand and arm. So arm actually. So see how it's darker here. So you would use more pencil. And then as you're going away from it, you can kind of skip space as you're creating the shading. See, I'm showing that up close so you can see more, a little bit more white of the paper showing through, and then that's going to give you that lighter shading look. The other thing is too, you can go back and you can smooth it out with your tortillon if you like. I like to do a little bit of that in this area. It's going to make it a little bit smoother, but it's also going to make it a little bit darker. So maybe sticking close to the arm using the tortillon. Our next step is going to be smoothing out the wrist using the tortillon. So you're going to very gently go over those strokes and smooth that out. And you're also going to smooth out the line that we created, that circular line that we created right here. Just going to smooth that out a little bit. We don't want it to look so much like a line. And when you're done that, you can smooth out the shading right here as well. So we're going to start smoothing out some shading a little more before we call the fingers done. We're going to add a little bit of some shading right here using our tortillon. Right here where the finger is bending from the palm. We're going to move to the next finger. We're going to smooth out the line for the nail bed and add that shading on this is called the fatty pad of your finger. We're going to then move our shading down to this area. And basically, we're kind of going to shade almost like the bottom of a triangle. So if I were to think this was a triangle, here would be the triangle. So we're going to kind of shade a little bit there and then go down. Just a little bit where the bend is. And I'm pointing to where we're also shading a little bit here too. And then we're going to come to the final finger. So we're going to also shade, again, the fatty pad of the finger using your tortillon. So if you don't have, or by now you should have, some pencil on your tortillon. If you don't, you want to just add a little bit. We're going to smooth out the line for the nail bed here. And then we're going to take this shading down toward the bottom part here where it's sort of right up against the other finger. So here at the bottom. We're not finished with the fingers, but that is our medium shading. And we're going to go back in, going to erase some spots. We're going to add some more wrinkles. We kind of started adding a wrinkle here. And we're also going to re-outline the hand on this side. So let's re-outline the hand first. So basically we're going to make this line a bit darker. Since it's an illustration, not so incredibly realistic, we're kind of just outlining all around it. Even the nail where the apple is, like that. Now we're going to go on the nails and we're going to make a little bit of an indication of the nail, kind of like, the edges of the nails. So basically, let me go really close. So these parts right here. And we're going to make it a little bit darker in the corners of where the nails meet your fingers and here. So see, I made it a little bit darker here, here, and here. We'll do the same on this nail. Here, there. And the other nail. And then we're going to add just a little bit of shading to the nails once we've completed that. And then we're going to make the nails just a little bit wrinklier and a little bit lumpier. But first, let's go on each of the nails. So we're going to come back to this one. Basically, there would be shading on the right side of each nail bed. Also, this nail is a little flat, so I'm erasing it and just making it a little bit bumpy here to make it more realistic. And same with this one. Okay, but now a little bit of shading, just a little bit. Again, like a gradient, would be just a tiny bit of shading, like that. And now we're going to start adding some wrinkles. So here's a bump here. I'm going to add a little bit of a wrinkle. All on this side, we're going to add some little wrinkles. Here's another bending part. So I usually add a longer line and then a shorter line. And we're going to now come to the second finger. And we're going to make sort of a bump here. Kind of going to do a little bit of an outline, making some bumps. And where those bumps are, we're going to make wrinkles. So wrinkle lines. But those lines are really light going on the skin. And then we're going to come around the other side. So here, we're going to make, where the wrinkles are here, we're going to now make some bumpy areas, but we curve inward where there's a bump on the other side or a lump. Like that. See, it looks a little more like a finger. We can also make on the other side of this finger some more lines, wrinkle lines. Those lines should usually occur where the finger is bending. See, look at my finger. You can see basically what happens is as it bends, the skin on the other side kind of puffs up. And the same here too, in between the wrinkle. So think of that as we're, creating these wrinkles. So we're going to finally come to this one, this finger here. We started off with the wrinkle here. I'm going to make it a little bit bumpier and then a little bit more bumpy here. And let's add maybe a few wrinkles as it's bending on the other side. And then we're going to sort of outline it, making it a little bumpy. And then finally over here, you're going to add a bit of a sort of a straight line coming off of this sort of fatty pad and one line here. And then a little bit of shading underneath the apple. And the final part we're going to do to this hand is we're also going to make this line darker on the other side of the wrist. And also where the clothing is there. So our final parts now are going to be just adding shading here and then finally to the apple. The other thing we want to do, remember where we kind of created that oval? You still want it, but if you have a sharp line here, you want to kind of lighten up that line a little bit using your eraser. And then we're going to come into the dark fold here, and we're going to make another line here because this is the inside fold, and we're going to make it shadowed. So again, we make this line here. Let me move this up. And then we're going to go dark here and get lighter as we go out towards. So again, dark here. It's kind of like a gradient. Welcome, Audrey. We're actually just finishing up in the next.
I know. I'll pick it up in the recording. I did want to
Yeah,
see this because I wanted to see how you drew the hand because I have a hard time with hands.
yeah. It's so great to have you.
You're so good, Anita. I hate to
Oh,
miss your other sessions. You
oh,
make it seem so easy.
that's very sweet of you. Thank you for those kind words. I try to break it down. So it's all on the recording for you. So see how we've made it darker here and here, and we're going to make it just a little bit more dark here. But it gets a little bit light. And then just a little bit darker on the edge there. And you can see I even changed direction as I'm shading, if that's okay to do. And when you get to the sleeve, you do add a little bit of shading on the inside, but then you can also make this part of the sleeve a little darker too by outlining it. And we're going to do something similar with each of the folds as well. But before we do that, we want to shade along the outside of the fingers. We want a little bit of a, kind of smoky, dark, shaded area. So now I'm taking my pencil and shading around the outside. And then you can take your tortillon to that and blend it out so that it's kind of fuzzy, kind of smoky fuzzy. So again, we go around and maybe about, you can kind of see about how much I'm kind of shading. We even go along the sleeve, the outside of the sleeve with that shading. And then again, I'm going to take my tortillon, blend it out, and then once it's all blended around there, I'm going to blend it again on the outside so that it looks like a gradient, so that there's still some shading, but the shading is getting lighter, right? So the way you do that is you kind of blend that line that you've created for the shading, and you blend it into the part of the paper that has no shading, and you get a gradient, which if anyone's not familiar with that term in art, it's very similar to anything else. It gets lighter and lighter, but gradually. And so I'm also going to still go back in with my pencil and just make it a little bit darker right up against the hand. So I'm just going back in after the shading and the tortillon and just making the shading a little bit darker again using my pencil right around the hand. And the sleeve. And that's going to bring us into the sleeve. Which is going to be the next to final part before we finish off the apple. And the apple is really super easy. Much easier than the shading with the hand. So if you've hung in there at this up until now, the apple's going to be even easier and quicker. So we're going to come up against each of our folds, right? This is the material folding. And so we're going to start to add light shading right next to it, usually at the right of it with our pencil. And the shading that I do, because we're trying to mimic the material being folded, I kind of make a line a little bit and then some shading. For instance, the hard edge would be where the material is. This part would be where the material is bunching up. So if I were to make this darker, and you can, it would look like that. And here's the material bunching up and creating a shadow. That's what those portions are. And I'm going to go in really close. So we're going to do that around each section. So here again, the material is kind of bunching up. I'm going to make sort of another line next to this one, and then I'm going to shade, because that's the part of the material that's bunching up. So just to give you sort of another reference of that, I don't have really bunchy, but see, here's a fold. And so maybe this would be my dark line. This would be my shading. See where it's kind of bunching? So we're kind of trying to do something very similar. Here's another one, right? The material is bunching together. We're kind of drawing in between two pieces of material bunching up. I don't know if that helps, but I just thought of that. So here we are, here's another fold. Again, we can add a little bit shading here. And the last one. So we kind of make it like triangular, the parts where the material is kind of bunching around. And then we're going to add some bit of our tortillon when you're done. And that's going to be basically shading, just using the dark of what you did. And you're going to shade that whole part. But then you're also going to take the white of your eraser and you're going to erase down the line so that you're now creating a bit of some light part, some lightness that's hitting each part of the sleeve. So see what I'm doing here? Right up against the line on either side in each section, I just take my eraser and I go kind of in a line right up against it. And now I just created some light. And our final part of this is you can outline kind of in a bumpy way along the outside of that sleeve. So I just took a line and just made it darker. And we're ready for our apple. So we're going to take our red. And basically the way we're going to do this apple is going to be strokes going up and down. And we're going to change direction. because that's the way an apple looks like. We're going to leave a shine circle here. So let's draw that shine circle first. You're going to draw it very lightly with the red. So if I were to do that, kind of like that. See how light that is? We're going to go in the middle of our apple on the other side first, and we're going to make strokes coming from the center, like that. Now we want space in between. We're also going to take our red and outline our apple. We're also going to outline around our fingers. And now we're going to start at the top of our apple. And we're going to start using strokes that are going around from the top to the bottom, like this. Remember, we're going to avoid the white circle that we created. So we'll pick up our strokes again right at the top. And we're going to go all around the apple, leaving lines for now. And then we're going to change direction when we get to the other side. Our curved lines are going to be going in that direction of that side of the apple. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to put your red down. And you're going to pick up your green. And we're going to now outline our leaf. We're also going to go on the inside and create some veins. And then you're going to lightly color it this green. Not yet. So you're going to lightly color that green. And then you're going to pick up your yellow. And you're going to go on your leaf and you're going to color over it yellow. And guess what? You're going to do the same with your yellow on the apple. You're going to go on the top part and you're going to very lightly color in yellow on top of your strokes of red. You're going to color in the white spaces yellow. And you're going to pick up your brown. And we're now going to outline our stem in brown. And then you're going to color it in brown, but you're going to make sure that there are some darker shaded parts, which would be in the round part. And then also on the inside, some shaded and a little bit right at the where it meets the apple. And when you're done, you're going to add some yellow to that. Just on top of everything. And then we're finally going to take our red and we're going to start coloring in the dark parts of the apple, which is down below and along the edge on the left side here. Again, it's almost like a gradient. We make it darker up until that circular white area. And then a little bit darker, or I'm sorry, a little less as we go around that circle. And then it gets darker again around the top of the apple. So we press on our strokes. Now remembering, we're still kind of trying to keep it as there's strokes in the apple up at the top. But as we get towards where the fingers are, we color in solid. And it's the darkest where the fingers are at the bottom. And in that white part that we left alone, you can lightly shade pink using your red. You also want to get a little darker right inside the apple where the core is. And then your final part will be adding a little bit of blue in there. That's all we need of the blue. The blue is what gives the really dark areas, which is right where the core is. You just add a little bit of blue there. And if you want, you can even add it to the bottom where the fingers are on top of the apple. And you can add some strokes. And I'm going to lift up. And I actually like how this apple came out better than my original. So I'm going to remove my spotlight. And I'm also going to stop the recording at this point.